So in terms of who the Government Accountability Office is in the U.S., the GAO as we're called, we are the closest analog is in the Australian National Audit Office, ANAO, residing in Canberra. We do a broad array of professional services for the Congress, most of which involve performance auditing, financial auditing, and then I even do technology studies and things like that. So ultimately, we're an accountability organization. We support Congress in oversight, insight, and foresight work. In that regard, we are essentially an analytic shop. And so we do a lot of analysis, and that's where we have been growing in our thinking on how to do more advanced analytics on this, or so-called big data. So the ways in which big data are different than sort of the traditional approach is this idea of what I'm calling data alchemy. You're taking data sets from here, and even open data are things that are not something the government specially collects. Think about, in the US, our census data and so on. We have a constitutionally mandated census product. So there are those sort of data that are available usually to academics and things. But in the new world, computation is so cheap, and the creative thinking and the algorithms and the rise of the algorithms are what are driving a lot of this admixture of various types of data, disparate data, sometimes even dirty data, that in the past we would just complain about, ignore, and move on, but that actually in doing the alchemy in the sort of the data lab, if you will, can bring some very surprising and often very powerful insights. For a long time, I would say the federal government was in the U.S. was the primary mover in doing what now we have the moniker of big data. Our National Aeronautics Space Administration, or NASA, our Department of Energy, does a lot of computation data science historically, but what's happened are the creativity with the rise of cheap computing, the ubiquity of mobile devices and things like that, created the environment or the infrastructure to have lots of data collected and new insights coming about. And so I think there's a reason that Google has shifted from being a noun to a verb, right? If I want to learn about IPAA, I can Google IPA on that instead of trying to remember what the letters are and go in. Oftentimes I just do that, even on GAO's own reports, interestingly. So we're seeing that. You're seeing, of course, Facebook has exceeded 1.5 billion users globally. So you have an automatic network, social network that has never been seen before. And of course, Twitter, 140 characters of unfiltered thought if you want to put things out. But you can do a lot of sense making in real time, even on regions and localities, on things like that. So obviously, those words are household names. Those companies are large, and they have transformed the world indeed. I see in the not too distant future what's already emerging, or even a concern about the non-governmental things. You see Facebook changing its third use data usage policy and things like that, because they're sitting on a gold mine of our personal data that we have given them in exchange for being able to connect with family, friends, and so on. So I don't think it's going to go away for government or even the private sector, and I think as those two co-evolve on this, it'll become even as I think the responsibility of just not only providing data, but providing algorithm transparency on the data and how it's used, I think is going to be critical to help minimize the scare narrative, because it is powerful indeed to be able to do these things. The number one challenge is socio-cultural in nature. One of my panelists was talking about this here in Australia. It's the same in the US. We even have data agencies that are funded annually to collect and manage assets and things, but they don't think about a shift from the idea of need to know into responsibility to provide. And so that sociocultural element is there. I think a second related, also I would put in the sociocultural dimension, is just thinking data analytically about things. So the way we think about problems now requires a level of creativity that I think the younger generation has as a natural element, which is a good thing, because I believe this is another case where the younger generation will save us older folks on this. So I think the cultural ones are the top. Even as you look to the grand federation on things, start small. I think localities provide these nice data science alchemy environments. You have relatively de-risked environments so that you can try and bring things together and solve local problems, and you can iterate quickly. It's not about not failing, as the Premier spoke about last night. It's about taking managed risk and trying that and having a management structure that is open to innovation and rewards failure in that you try and do something, you learn quickly and iterate and go on and do that. So I think that what I see in the US is a lot of the leadership, even as we've had these traditional agencies doing lots of data science, I think a lot of the problem solving of public sectors is happening in state and local. And so I think starting small, moving incrementally, albeit it's still innovative, is the way to go. I think it's unavoidable. I think I'm a fan of that great Australian philosopher Nicole Kidman, okay, who in the Days of Thunder movie long ago whispered in Tom Cruise's ear and said, "Control is an illusion," okay? And I think the power of that is important because you're not really controlling things. You want to try and manage and shape and influence and leverage the tsunami of data and the algorithms that are there to help solve real-world problems in a way that changes people's lives. It really does amplify the service or the servant aspect of public servant. And so I think it allows us to do a better job as public servants, doing more with less, which I think increasingly our national, local, state leadership expect us to do.